The day was slow, thick as honey. The air itself seemed to resist movement, as if time had grown weary and decided to drag its feet. Shadows stretched long and lazy across the ground, and the world felt suspended in a strange, heavy stillness. Alice sat by the riverbank, her book forgotten, the pages fluttering in the faintest breeze. She gazed at the water, lost in thought, her mind wandering far from the words she had been reading. The world felt sleepy, but something buzzed beneath the quiet. The gentle hum of insects, the soft rustle of grass. There was a tension in the air, a sense that something was about to happen. A storm was coming. She could feel it. The sky darkened, clouds swirling with a silent promise of thunder, and the wind carried a chill that made her shiver. Then she saw the white rabbit. It darted through the grass, startling in its urgency, its white fur almost glowing against the gloom. It wore a waistcoat, checked its watch, eyes wild with panic. The sight was so peculiar, so out of place that Alice blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. Oh dear, I shall be too late," it muttered, its voice trembling with anxiety, as if the fate of the world depended on its punctuality. It darted into a rabbit hole beneath an old tree, vanishing from sight in an instant, leaving only a ripple of disturbed earth behind. Alice, compelled by curiosity, followed. She hesitated only a moment, her heart pounding with excitement and fear, before she knelt and peered into the darkness. The hole was a sudden drop. She fell. There was no time to scream, no chance to grab hold of anything. The world spun wildly as she tumbled down, down, down. Darkness swallowed her, cold and absolute. It pressed against her skin, thick and suffocating, erasing all sense of direction. She drifted past shelves lined with jars, marmalade shadows, whispers, teeth. Each jar seemed to hold a secret, a memory, or a fragment of a forgotten dream, spinning slowly as she passed. Time stretched. The fall felt endless. Down, down, down. Clocks spun past her, their hands whirling in impossible directions, marking moments that slipped away before she could grasp them. Would it ever end? The thought chilled her. Fear crept in, cold and sharp, as she wondered if she would fall forever, lost in this strange, bottomless world. The darkness pressed in, alive and watchful. She felt unseen eyes upon her, as if the shadows themselves were curious about this intruder from above. She closed her eyes, but the jars haunted her. Their contents whispered to her, voices echoing in the void, promising secrets and dangers she could not yet understand. Silence weighed heavy, as if the world held its breath. Every sound was swallowed by the darkness, leaving only the thud of her own heartbeat in her ears. When she landed softly on a pile of leaves, the silence only deepened. The world seemed to pause, as if waiting to see what she would do next. The world above was gone. The faint circle of light was impossibly far away, a memory more than a reality, and the darkness pressed closer. She was somewhere else entirely. The air was thick with mystery, the walls lined with doors and shadows, each promising a new and unknown adventure, and nothing would ever be the same. In that moment, Alice understood she had crossed a threshold, and her journey had only just begun. Alice stood at the edge of the forest, brushing leaves from her dress, her breath catching in the cool, damp air. The world behind her was wild and tangled, but ahead, something stranger waited. She found herself in a long, low hall, its ceiling pressing down, the space lit by a single flickering lamp that cast more shadows than light. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and secrets. Shadows danced restlessly on the walls, stretching like long, searching fingers, twisting and curling as if alive, reaching for her as she moved forward. Dozens of doors lined the hall, tall, short, wide, narrow, each one different, each one closed tight. Some were carved with strange symbols, others plain and battered, but all seemed to watch her with silent expectation. Silence pressed in from every side, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the sound of her own breath and the faint echoing creak of the floor beneath her feet. In the center of the hall, a glass table stood beneath the lamp's glow, holding a tiny golden key that sparkled with promise and mystery. She tried the key on every door she passed, turning, twisting, hoping, but none would open. With each failed attempt, frustration and fear grew, curling in her stomach like a cold serpent. Each door seemed to hum with a strange energy, whispers leaking through the cracks, some mocking, some hungry, all eager for her attention. The voices tangled together, promising secrets and threats in equal measure. Then, a low, heavy curtain caught her eye, its fabric shimmering in the dim light, as if inviting her to look behind it. Behind the curtain, she discovered a tiny door, no bigger than a mouse hole. The golden key fit perfectly, clicking with a satisfying sound that echoed in the silence. Through the little door, she glimpsed a sunlit garden, lush and green, filled with flowers and the promise of safety. It was a world away from the darkness, so close yet impossibly out of reach. She knelt and tried to squeeze through, but the door was far too small. No matter how she twisted or turned, she could not fit. Frustration welled up, tears stinging her eyes. When she turned back, she saw that the glass table now held a small, ornate bottle labeled "Drink Me," its label curling as if it had always been there, waiting for her to notice. The bottle hadn't been there before. Its sudden appearance sent a chill down her spine, as if the hall itself was alive and watching her every move. The air grew colder, a thin mist creeping along the floor. Shadows twisted into monstrous shapes crawling up the walls, their forms shifting and writhing. The silence became thick and watchful, as if holding its breath. Alice's skin prickled. She realized with a jolt of terror that she was not alone. Something unseen moved in the darkness, just out of sight, its presence heavy and intent. Objects shifted on their own, a mysterious force playing a silent, sinister game. The hall seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if waiting for her next move. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath quick and shallow. She hesitated, knowing the rules of this place were not hers to command. Every choice felt like a test, every moment a risk. The garden beyond the tiny door beckoned with light and warmth, a stark contrast to the cold, dangerous shadows that pressed in around her. She longed for the safety it promised, but the threat in the darkness was real and close. Alice stood at a crossroads, the doors looming over her, the eyes of Wonderland watching from the shadows. She had to choose, risk the unknown, or remain trapped in the hall of whispering doors. The game had only just begun. The bottle was cool in Alice's hand. The liquid shimmered, promising escape. She drank. Instantly she shrank, now small enough for the door, but the key was far above, out of reach. Despair overwhelmed her. She cried, and her tears grew into a sea. The hall vanished beneath rising salt water. She swam, lost in her own sorrow. A mouse appeared, eyes glowing red, swimming beside her. It was no friend, just another lost soul. They drifted together in silence. Strange things floated by, a dead bird, a broken teacup, a blood-smeared playing card. The sea was a graveyard for Wonderland's broken things. Loneliness pressed in. Even tears could drown you here. Alice searched for a shore, desperate to escape the sorrow. The mouse vanished into the gloom. She kicked harder, refusing to be lost. Somewhere there had to be land. Alice washed ashore at the edge of a twisted wood. The trees clawed at the sky, shadows writhing. The other creatures fled, leaving her alone. She entered the forest, path barely visible. Fungi glowed sickly green. The air was thick and silent. Shadows moved when she looked away. Eyes watched from the darkness. A voice purred, "Lost, are we?" A grin appeared in the air, then green eyes, then the Cheshire Cat. It lounged above, grinning wide. "Which way ought I to go?" Alice asked. "That depends on where you want to get to," the cat replied. Its advice was a riddle, its smile a threat. "We're all mad here," it said, fading away. Only the grin lingered, mocking her. The madness here was not whimsy, it was danger. Alice pressed on, more afraid than ever. The winding path led Alice through tangled undergrowth and twisted trees, until she stumbled into a clearing bathed in the last light of dusk. There, in the heart of the shadowy woods, stood a long, cluttered tea table, its surface crowded with mismatched cups, cracked saucers, and teapots that seemed to have been forgotten by time itself. 3 peculiar figures sat around the table, a wild-eyed hatter with a crooked grin, a twitching March hare whose nervous energy filled the air, and a dormouse so small and still, slumbering with its head tucked inside a teapot as if hiding from the world. An ancient clock perched on the table's edge, its hands frozen at 6 o'clock. Time here had stopped, trapping the party in an endless, unchanging moment, an eternal twilight of tea and confusion. "No room!" the hatter suddenly shouted, his voice echoing through the empty clearing, though the table was nearly deserted, with empty chairs stretching into the shadows. Ignoring the outburst, Alice sat down anyway, longing for a sense of normalcy in this bizarre world, hoping that perhaps a simple cup of tea could anchor her to reality. But the conversation was a whirlwind of nonsense, riddles with no answers, poems that twisted into confusion, and words that seemed to tangle in the air. Every sentence led to more bewilderment, leaving Alice feeling lost and out of place. Leaning in, the hatter whispered, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" His eyes sparkled with mischief, but he didn't want an answer. He only wanted to unsettle. The March hare offered Alice an invisible glass of wine, pouring from an empty bottle with a flourish, while the dormouse mumbled incoherently in its sleep, lost in dreams that seemed just as strange as the waking world. The tea party felt less like a celebration, and more like a prison. The hosts were inmates, trapped by their own madness, unable to escape the endless loop of tea and riddles. Alice felt her mind beginning to fray at the edges, the relentless absurdity gnawing at her sense of self. The longer she stayed, the more she feared she would lose herself to the madness. Suddenly, chaos erupted as the hatter and hare tried to stuff the dormouse deeper into the teapot. Alice stood up in fear, her heart pounding, and backed away from the table, desperate to escape the madness closing in around her. She fled the clearing, the sounds of the endless tea time, laughter, riddles, and clinking cups, echoing behind her, haunting her every step as she ran. The dark woods seemed to swallow her whole, the trees closing in as if to keep her from ever finding her way out. Wonderland's madness was infectious, seeping into her thoughts with every breath. Alice pressed on, forcing herself to keep moving, knowing that if she stopped, she might never escape the strange, dreamlike prison of Wonderland. Alice found a door in a tree, finally the garden. But the beauty was tainted by the scent of blood. 3 card gardeners painted white roses red, hands shaking. The Queen of Hearts arrived, fury incarnate. The king cowered, the white rabbit trembled. The queen's eyes found Alice, judgmental, cold. She demanded Alice's name, not asked. A single white petal enraged her. "Off with their heads!" she screamed. The gardeners were dragged away. The garden was an execution ground, not a paradise. The queen commanded Alice to play croquet. Flamingos for mallets, hedgehogs for balls, soldiers for arches. The queen cheated, screaming at every slight. The game was chaos, a display of her cruelty. Alice realized here, survival meant pleasing the queen. Wonderland's beauty hid its violence. She was trapped in the queen's game. The croquet game ended in crisis. The queen's tarts were stolen. The knave of hearts was accused. A trial began. The king presided, the queen glared, the jury scribbled nonsense. The hatter testified in riddles, terrified. The cook brought only chaos and sneezing. The trial was a farce, justice a joke. The knave's fate was sealed before it began. Alice watched, anger rising. This was murder, not justice. The white rabbit called the final witness, Alice. All eyes turned to her. The queen demanded answers. Alice felt courage stir. She would not be a pawn. Wonderland's madness had pushed her to the edge. "Nothing," Alice said, her voice steady. The queen's smile vanished. As Alice spoke, she began to grow, rapidly, powerfully. The court shrank beneath her. "You're nothing but a pack of cards," she shouted. The illusion shattered. The queen screamed off with her head, but the words were powerless. The cards surged, a storm of paper. Alice ran as the world dissolved. Courtroom, woods, garden, tea party, all collapsing. Wonderland unraveled, a nightmare losing its grip. The queen's scream echoed, fading. Alice ran toward a pinprick of light, a memory of home. The faces of Wonderland flashed by. Cat, hatter, rabbit. She ran for her life, for reality. The dream was ending. She burst through the light. Alice tumbled onto soft grass. The chaos of Wonderland faded. The riverbank returned. Her sister smiled down at her. "What a long sleep you've had." Alice sat up, heart pounding, scanning for any sign of Wonderland. She told her sister everything. Falling, shrinking, the mad tea party, the queen. Her sister listened, but thought it only a dream. But Alice knew better. The dream clung to her, a shadow at the edge of thought. The world seemed sharper, more fragile. She glanced at the rabbit hole, a doorway, a scar. She was changed, no longer bored, but watchful. She had faced monsters and survived. As the sun set, Alice knew she would never forget. Wonderland's darkness was now part of her, forever.